In the beginning, Bell created the telephone. You picked it up, you made a call, you got a bill from the phone company. It was simple and it was good, if a little pricey for long distance. As we first reported last December, though, there are now lots of phone companies locked in battle for supremacy or simply survival in what is now the predatory world of the telecom industry. Telephone service, as we used to know it, has become the stepchild of the digital revolution. You can't read your bill, you're bombarded with junk mail, and worst of all, everyone wants to bother you at dinner time.
We're offering every month 2,000 minutes free for every single line.
The unsolicited calls come from aggressive, sometimes shady telemarketers hired by the phone companies to try and get you to switch your service. Connecticut Attorney General Richard Blumenthal says they're much more than just an annoyance. They're symptomatic, he says, of a predatory business environment that's turned once reputable companies into corporate hucksters and con artists.
When I first became Attorney General 10 years ago, we were investigating boiler rooms in Las Vegas. Now we're investigating huge multinational corporations for many of the same kinds of scams and schemes.
He's talking about companies like AT&T, MCI WorldCom, Sprint, and Quest, some of the biggest names in telecommunications. Blumenthal has sued all of them.
Competing by cheating has become a way of life for the telecommunications industry for many of these corporations, many of the most reputable of them.
What's in it for them in the long run?
In the long run, dollars are in it for them.
Blumenthal has sued AT&T for billing people who aren't their customers and Quest for a practice called slamming, stealing their competitors' customers by forging their signatures on authorization forms.
We've seen cases where AT&T continued sending people bills after they sought to terminate the service. We've seen companies like Quest send people bills for service that was never ordered or requested.
Is it possible that this is just bureaucratic incompetence?
Well, there's a point at which a company ought to be held accountable for its incompetence, particularly when it involves use of forged documents.
But Blumenthal says they can't blame incompetence for their TV ads, which he says are blatantly deceptive.
One of the reasons that we're suing these companies is they're telling people 7 cents a minute, anytime, anywhere.
Absolutely, positively.
But it's not 7 cents a minute, anytime, anywhere, when you factor in the restrictions, the monthly fees, the charges and surcharges that appear in fine print, which you would need a remote control, slow motion, and high-definition television to read.
There it is.
Now you see it, now you don't. And now you can't even see it.
It's white against white?
White against white for a split second. Fine print is illegible and meaningless.
You're saying it's a scam?
A lot of these are very much like scams. Because it's done by AT&T or MCI or Sprint, people are much more reluctant to use that word. But when all is said and done and the niceties are cut away, these are scams. They are schemes to deceive people.
We spent months trying to get interviews with AT&T, MCI, Sprint, and Quest. They didn't want to talk to us. Phone companies may call you every night, but just try and call them.
For all questions about your bill or payment arrangements, press 1.
You find yourself in voicemail jail, on hold, or lost in a maze of automated touch-tone menus.
For all other service requests, press 2.
There isn't much service in customer service these days. And it all began in 1996, when Congress passed and President Clinton signed a new law deregulating the telecommunications industry.
Verizon Long Distance.
Long-distance companies wanted to offer local phone service. Local phone companies wanted to offer long distance. Cable TV companies wanted to get into the phone business, and phone companies wanted to get into the TV business. Everyone got what they wanted, except for the consumer.
This is one of the most abysmal failures in experimenting with deregulation in our nation's history.
Gene Kimmelman of Consumers Union says it was all supposed to create competition and produce lower prices, but it hasn't happened.
Cable rates, since we deregulated, are up almost 3 times faster than inflation, more than 30%. Local phone rates are up, and the majority of consumers are actually paying the same or more for long distance. And no sign of meaningful competition in the local phone market.
Back in 1996, 94% of local phone service was controlled by the 7 regional giants called the Baby Bells. Today, through mergers and acquisitions, 93% of all local phone service is now controlled by 4 not-so-Baby Bells: Verizon, Bell South, SBC, and Qwest. None of those companies would talk to us either. Instead, they referred us to their lobbying organization, the United States Telecom Association, and its vice president, David Bolger.
We've been trying for months and months to get an interview with anybody at one of the major phone companies and have had no luck. Why is it you think that they don't want to talk to us?
They want to talk to you through the trade association.
So they essentially decided to throw you to the wolves.
There are no wolves being, you're not a wolf. What we are
You haven't heard my questions yet.
Like the one about his clients stealing customers from competitors, switching phone service without their permission.
Slamming is illegal. Slamming is fraud. Slamming is stealing. And local telephone companies have nothing to do with slamming violations.
The Attorney General of Connecticut is suing Qwest for slamming, and Qwest just paid a big settlement in New Jersey for slamming. Florida's fined Verizon for slamming by its GTE subsidiary.
These are all done through rogue third-party marketers.
The third-party marketers that Bolger is blaming are all of those telemarketing companies that his members hire to make those annoying phone calls, and they pay them based on the number of people they get to switch.
These are rogue companies out there who are fly-by-night in many cases, who have engaged in duplicitous acts, and it's illegal.
Why are your clients hiring them?
These
Fly-by-night companies.
They're not known that they're fly-by-night companies.
You find that out later.
You obviously find that out later.
I mean, isn't that just kind of a convenient excuse?
Not at all. Not at all.
But the FCC doesn't buy that defense. They fine the phone companies, and neither does Attorney General Blumenthal.
We think the corporation has to have knowledge of a lot of these problems. Even if they're done by third-party distributors, we hold the corporation responsible.
And that's not the only thing he holds the phone companies responsible for.
I don't understand my phone bill a lot of the time. I know a lot of people, very informed, very smart, who don't either. And I think that's the result of a deliberate strategy on the part of the phone company.
There are no hidden charges here. There are no hidden taxes. Everything is explicit. Everything is right out in front.
Everything is explicit and right out in front?
Yes.
Are you kidding?
No.
Even the former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, William Kennard, said he couldn't understand his phone bill.
The most modest statements are packed with fees, surcharges, taxes, and things that look like taxes but really aren't, like the FCC or subscriber line charge of $5. Looks like a tax, but in fact the local phone company keeps that $5 a month as a charge for connecting you to long distance. You pay a monthly portability fee, which lets you keep your telephone number if you switch phone companies, but they don't give it back if you don't. Sprint even charges its customers a 1% monthly surcharge to pay for its property taxes.
But the biggest mystery of all is something called the Universal Service Fee. Phone companies are required to pay 6.9% of their long-distance income to subsidize rural phone service as well as internet service for schools, libraries, and hospitals. The phone companies are not required to pass it along to you, but they do anyway, and they even tack on a little something for themselves. Gene Kimmelman of Consumers Union says it's one more way for the phone companies to fatten their bottom line.
Most long-distance companies are now charging almost 10% of your overall calls as a separate universal service fee.
But the universal service charge is only 6.9%.
But the long-distance companies are charging quite a bit more.
Some up to 12%.
That's right. That's right. We can't figure out why the long-distance companies are charging so much more to the consumer for this federal subsidy program than what the actual cost of running the program really is.
Are they just keeping that extra 6% or 5%?
As far as I can tell, nobody in the government really knows. The companies have some excuses, but the numbers don't add up.
At the Federal Communications Commission, Dorothy Atwood, who oversees the phone industry, is not happy about the way some phone companies are billing their customers.
Any legitimate reasons why a company might be charging 12% instead of 6.9%?
Well, they've offered us explanations, but the important thing here is that we're concerned about the disparity between what we're asking for and what in fact is being collected by these companies.
What happens to that extra money?
Well, we've asked carriers that same question.
As we mentioned before, and as you probably already know, it's not easy to get answers out of the phone companies, even when it comes to service and reliability, which was once their hallmark. But with faxes and cell phones and the internet all straining the system, even service has begun to deteriorate, particularly between the Midwest and California. Gene Kimmelman of Consumers Union says since the 1996 Telecommunications Act, customer complaints about the quality of service have exploded.
More and more people are having trouble getting plain old dial tone. They're getting fast, busy signals. They're not being able to order the lines and get them quickly. They're not able to get their service up and running.
They're simply not meeting the standards of service that consumers have a right to expect.
I disagree. I disagree.
David Bolger of the United States Telecom Association says local phone service is still the best in the world.
When you want to pick up the phone, there's a 99.99% chance that you're going to have dial tone there. That's what people rely on.
You represent Quest, right?
Yes, we do. Quest is based in Denver, and it is considered a baby bell.
I mean, they settled a lawsuit and paid more than $43 million in fines last year for bad service.
Did they?
Earlier this year, the Illinois Commerce Commission fined Ameritech, which is part of SBC, also one of your clients, right?
Members, yes.
$30 million for failing to meet basic service requirements.
The issue of customer service regarding Quest and SBC, I'm not going to speak to the particulars.
We're talking about, $40, $50 million in fines in 1 year.
Okay.
For lousy service.
It's not always for service quality issues. Compliance
not meeting
measures,
basic service requirements. That's SBC in Illinois. 1 year.
America's local phone companies are at the forefront of providing wonderful service, high quality, and at an affordable rate.
Problem is their customers don't believe that right now, and it's not a great time to be in the telecom business. Stock prices are down, companies are heavily in debt from acquisitions and spending on new technology, and tens of billions of dollars that was raised to fund new competition has disappeared into companies that are now as dead as dot-coms. The old gold-plated system of regulated monopolies that rewarded quality and service has been replaced with one that rewards neither.
For the average consumer, there's now the worst of both worlds, a monopoly that's unregulated. So the consumers have no choices, but they have no effective day-to-day protection.
Several things have happened since we first reported this story. Quest has lost money for the last 8 quarters and is fighting to stave off bankruptcy. Long-distance competitors AT&T, Sprint, and WorldCom are also mired in debt and struggling. The phone companies have settled the state of Connecticut's slamming and advertising suits. As for the U.S. Telecoms Association spokesman David Bolger, he doesn't work there anymore.